In this lesson, we're going to look at the head and the ears, and define those shapes in our low-res mesh so that we have something to build off of for our high-res mesh. Now, I'm using the skeletal image plane that we have. So I'm just going to check that real quick against what I've already built in my mesh. And I see that the head on my mesh is actually quite a bit larger than the one on my image plane. So I'm going to check my image planes one to the other and see what the differences are so that I can make the best judgment on how to proceed. So in this case, I've chosen to use a sphere. I started with a sphere where the polar ends are right at the ear. This gives me a little bit more resolution where I need it, and it gives me real simple lines to follow when I'm constructing the face. And when you're just starting out, that's just a wise place to start. Many times you'll see people start with the polar surface in the mouth, and then you have a pole in the back of the head, which isn't too attractive, and it takes a lot of work to try to get rid of that. So we have the definition where we need it, which is the ear. The ear is a complex feature that needs quite a number of polygons, but we're going to try to stay as light as possible regardless. First thing we want to do is delete half of our mesh so we don't need to worry about the other half. So forward, and I'm going to polygon subobjects. I'm going to select half my mesh, making sure that I only have half my mesh selected, and I'm going to delete that. Okay, now I have the half of the mesh that I'm going to work with, and just quickly I'm going to select those surfaces that I'm not going to work with, which is the surfaces that are joined here. And so I'm going to delete those. And now I'm going to grab the edges by clicking on Edge subobject, holding the Shift key down, and grab the entire loop. And I'm just simply going to use Extrude and other simple tools to get a basic shape. You can also depress the Shift key and get the mesh going that way. I'm scaling, I'm depressing the Shift key with the move and the scale, and so I'll just get some geometry to work with very quickly. So here we go. First want a base for my ear. If you go ahead and put your fingers at the back of your ear, you'll feel a little base for your ear that's actually holding your ear cartilage away from your head. So once we have that, we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the scale key, the scale manipulator available. Hold the Shift key down, scale uniformly, and I'm getting the beginnings of my cartilage. With my move gizmo, I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and in Max it's just a really quick way to develop a mesh. Alright, take this all the way down. Alright, and so here you can see that we have the beginnings. I'm just going to do that one more time. So we have plenty of geometry to begin shaping up our ear, and it's already in a natural contour to the head, and so there's actually not a lot of work to do with this shape, to work on this area in here just a little bit in order to have our low resolution mesh. Most of the detail is actually done in the high resolution version for the ear, and other features of the face. So once we have this in order, we can have fun detailing that in the high res. So I'm going to work on this for just a bit, and I will be back when there's something to see. Alright, one of the first things I'm going to do is scale this smaller and weld the verts. Okay, and then I'm going to move this a little bit closer to the front, use my soft select as a way of grabbing the verts that are close to that, and I'm just going to tweak that back. I need a few more. Tweak that back into a more natural shape for the air. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is begin welding these edges together in the front of the ear that I'm not going to need. Next step is to get the general shape of the interior of the ear. So what we're going to do again is delete these triangle faces because they won't subdivide well, so we need to get rid of them. Delete those. The shape of the ear starts almost generally in the center, and then like a backward S swoops up and around and down. And I've pulled up a reference so that you can see. You can see that this is almost in the center, comes out and around, and then the same parallel shape comes out and around, forming the lobe. And we have just a little indent here, which behind it is the canal. So keeping in mind those features, we're going to just begin to shape our ear. Okay, I'm going to just draw those out so I can get a nice outer edge of that. I'm going to hold my shift key down and bring in that interior portion again. Just bring it all the way down and around. And now I think we've done just about all we can do by putting in edge loops. So what we're going to do is start shaping the ear by coming in here and moving the verts around. Some of these verts that we originally made right in here will end up actually welding together. For instance, these right in here, I'll just turn on my target weld feature, grab that vert and weld it back to the next one, which will then make a nice flat area there so that we can sculpt on that when we get to our high resolution tools. Now I'll come back when I have more for you to see, and we will continue. Alright, as I work back and forth, I'm going to continue to look at my reference to make sure that I have correct shape going for my ear. You can import your reference if you like as an image plane. Some of these smaller features I don't really bother doing that, I just kind of rough it in. If you are just beginning to model, I would probably recommend that so that you can get the proportions adequate for what you want. And when I weld these verts, I want to make sure that I'm not creating triangles as much as possible. These triangles are very difficult to subdivide well. They cause undesirable effects when you're in there in ZBrush or Mudbox and trying to create the high resolution mesh, so I try to use edge tools as much as possible, holding my shift key down, extruding, and making sure that I'm not welding verts to cause triangular polygons. And I certainly don't want to use n-gons. So as I work, I'm going to concentrate on those shapes that we talked about, and I will pause here and come back when I have a little bit more. I think before we go on, we'll do one more thing. Left view. I'm going to make sure that it's the scale and the position that we need. So I'll go in here, select the verts associated with my error. Make sure I have nothing else selected. Go to left view, L on the keyboard, and I can see that it's up just a little high and it's large. So we'll scale it down just a little bit and position that where we need it. And I'm not going to set it quite back that far because I'm actually going to create a little bit fuller face than what's in this sketched image. I tend to fill out the back of the head a little bit more and go with a more European type of a face. So we'll start with a fuller face, and this should be back far enough and the size that I want it. And now we will create the other half of our mesh. And I think we'll instance for the time being, so that as we work on this side, we'll also be updating this side. Alright, so in the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and begin working on the face. And this should be back far enough and the size that I want it. And now we will create the other half of our mesh. And I think we'll instance for the time being, so that as we work on this side, we'll also be updating this side. Alright, so in the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and begin working on the face.